Welcome to The Total Woman. I have a real treat for me tonight, which I'm assuming is going to be a real treat for you too. I'm very, very interested in collage, or collage, depending on what part of the country you're from. And I was searching for a wonderful collage artist to bring to you, and I found this remarkable woman who is making the most fantastic collages I've ever seen. And I just called you and said, hello, I'm Cheryl. Would you like to be on a television program? And God bless you. You said, oh, yes, I would. Anita Muise, welcome to The Total Woman.
Thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure. You came all the way down from New Hampshire, not that it's all the way down, but it's a trek.
When you're up there, it seems further going one way than the other.
I'm sure it does. And behind us, we have examples of your work, and during the program, we'll be showing other examples of your work. But I loved reading your resume because you've been around, as they say.
I've done a lot of different things.
Yes, you have. And I thought maybe we'd start there.
Sure.
Did you study art?
No, I didn't. No, I was a medical technology major.
Of course.
And decided that what I really enjoyed the most about it was illustrating my lab notebook. I didn't care for the work because it was too repetitive. I had always worked in libraries, supporting myself during college.
Oh, were you a librarian?
I was, yeah, well, not trained as one, but I worked in the Danvers Public Library. They had funds to recatalog from Dewey to LC. So all through high school and college, I worked there. So when I decided I was going to make a career change, I thought I'd go back to library. So I went to Simmons, got my master's degree. I worked
in library science?
Yes, yeah. Worked as a children's librarian, which was a lot of fun because the picture books are beautiful.
Yes.
And you have all these
Always
kids you can do art with.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I ended up working for an engineering firm.
How did that happen?
It just was one of those things that opened up. They wanted somebody with a science background. Oh. And they had a very nice tuition reimbursement program. And so I decided I would take advantage of that. I ended up staying for about 11.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was very nice because I was getting into rock collecting, and they had a geology department, so I could go and bring my treasures that I collected over the weekend and have them identified.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a rock hound as a kid. Yeah. Really loved it.
And that got me into the jewelry and the beads. And then one day I picked up a book by Jonathan Talbot that described the method that I use, and decided that collage was really the medium that I'd been looking for. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jonathan sends his hello, as you know.
Yes.
Ironically, I took a workshop from him last week. And he said, oh, Anita, oh my goodness, I know her. And I thought, the world is so small.
It is. It is.
My goodness, we just keep bumping into one another. And it's really very nice.
It is. It's fabulous.
Yes.
When I was living in Massachusetts, I used to go to Newburyport, and there was a gallery called Another Atmosphere.
Yes.
And there was a collage artist named Roderick Slater that had the most detailed enchanting collages on display, and I used to
own
look
4
at
of
them. You do?
I own 4 of his pieces. I bought them
Oh.
many, many years ago.
Aren't they wonderful?
They are wonderful.
So he was an inspiration, and I used to quilt, so some of them are, you know, kind of quilty. I'm working on a grid. I can't seem to get away from that. But it's just it's a wonderful way to express yourself and kind of personalize your art.
The arts are such a release. I mean, they can be stressful too, but there's such a release and a departure from everyday life for most people who are in technical jobs or repetitive jobs that kind of become muscle memory. And sometimes if you get good enough in the muscle memory, you can dream about the art side of it and come up with ideas.
Yes.
I thought it was fascinating that you mentioned Slater, because I saw his work in a local gallery here years and years ago, and was fascinated by looking into these tiny little windows that would have pristinely put together pieces of paper mixed with drawings and over drawings, and I just loved it because he reminded me of Joseph Cornell.
Oh, yes.
Who I am a very big fan of. And Cornell makes boxes, as you know, 3-dimensional boxes, but has that same kind of mystical nature to them. It's like a world.
Yes, and
The
if you
more
look
you
at
watch
it,
you almost feel like you're part of it. And I find that fascinating too. I think your work is like that. I see that same kind of drawing in. What's the story? What's the mystery? What is she trying to say? Or what is she trying to help me experience? And I think that's one of the great parts of the creative arts, is that we have a shared experience in some ways as a result of what we see with our eyes and what we intellectualize from that, like music.
yes.
You know, it speaks to all of us, but it doesn't always tell the same story.
No, it doesn't.
Which is so great.
And I have people that look at my collages and they say, this says this to me. And it's not what I intended when I created the piece, but I like the fact that different people have different interpretations.
Yes. I do too.
I try not to say this piece is about this or this piece means this, because I like the fact that people will read the story and come up with something a little different.
I'm really glad you said that, because that is, I had a long discussion very recently with someone about that. I do collages too, just for fun. And someone was visiting me, and I said, there's a story. It was a woman, a portrait, an ancient portrait of a woman that I'd made this wild frame around. And I said, oh, she has a story. And her response was, don't tell it to me. And then she said, I like to make up my own story. And I thought, yes, that's better. It's okay for me to have a story, but I shouldn't tell it to them, because it limits what they may come up with. Do you feel that way?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a discussion about that. There's a gentleman who has a collage museum. He was originally in Mexico. He moved to Texas, and now he's in Colorado. And he has a Yahoo group for collage artists. And that was a discussion topic. How much should you divulge? Should even your title suggest a specific thing, or should you leave it up to the observer to read the meaning into the piece? You know, and I like to talk about my collages. I mean, you know, and I like people to look at them. But I really like to listen to other people's interpretation more than giving out my own.
Does it give you a new look at it?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, they're all just kind of jumbled up. I have a very small gallery in a room off my bead shop. So everything is very tight because there's not very much space, and the work just keeps increasing. And so each piece is sort of not seen by itself. It's just kind of a mishmash, I guess, you know. And altogether, it makes a lovely statement, but sometimes the details of a particular piece are lost.
Yes.
But when I have somebody look at something and they say, oh, look at this, or what does this mean, or why did you do it this way?
Yes.
It kind of helps me see it again in a new light. So,
yeah, I can see that. We tend to want to see art separated out and kind of on a blank wall so that it takes all of the attention. but sometimes work like yours, which is very different. Your pieces do not look like they're coming necessarily from the same person. They do have a kind of universalist about them in that you explore different colors and different shapes, although you like circles. I noticed that we talked about that earlier. I like circles too. And I'm sure everyone has something like that in their art. I remember a professor in school said some artists will struggle all their lives with solving a particular form or a particular issue that they couldn't solve as young people and are still battling with for the rest of their life, but they don't always know it, but people who look at their work do. And I do think that's true.
Yeah,
you see sometimes almost a conflict where a piece doesn't look like something fits and you go, hey, that was an afterthought. Or you thought that was going to work and I see you've done it over there and you've done it over there. I think that's the joy of collage, because people identify that's a piece of newspaper.
Yeah.
And then they read it.
Yes.
And try
so
to
you
figure
can
out
tell
where
a story without,
yes.
you know,
yes.
overtly having, you know, if, oh, this is about a fire, it's a fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can just have a little newspaper clipping about, you know, an accident or something, and until you really study the piece, you don't even notice it. But then once you see it, you realize this is a very important element, you know?
Yes. We had an artist on the Total Woman not too long ago, and she's in that room, in the control room tonight, because she wanted to see you and see your work. And she had produced a fabulous book, and it was about eyesight and glasses. But every page had something totally unrelated to it. And it reminded me of collage. It made you think, well, why is the horse on the same page with the binoculars? But then it would be tied together somehow, and you'd go to the next one. And although it wasn't meant to be a collage, it had very much, her book had very much that kind of feel. And we find it fascinating, like children's books.
I was just going to say, I
Yes,
can think of children's
yes.
authors that do that, and it's, you know, in picture books. Yeah.
Do you have favorite illustrators?
Well, I've always liked Chris Van Allsburg. I think his work is absolutely beautiful. I mean, he's such a fabulous draftsman. He just...
Now, does he write the books or just
yes,
illustrate
he writes
them?
the story
Yes.
and also illustrates. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I always like Maurice Sendak
Oh, yes.
and
yeah.
his wild animals and...
Where the wild things are.
Yes,
yeah.
where the wild things are. I particularly liked In the Night Kitchen. That was always my favorite because it was a lot wilder than the other one. Really strange flying soup cans and things. I like that sort of thing. Tell me what you think and what you look for in a collage when you're gathering materials. Or actually, let's talk about that.
Okay.
How do you prepare your studio for the kinds of inspirations that you need to have around you?
Well, I like to maintain kind of an orderly space so that I can lay out a lot of material and not have it lost or buried by
Yes.
things. And I'm kind of seasonal in the way that I work.
Really?
Because in the summertime, my bead shop is very busy, so I'm sort of devoting all my time to that. But then things slow down, and that gives me time to really start focusing on collage. So right now I'm house cleaning and getting my big table cleared off.
Yes.
And I'm always collecting material. I'm lucky in that the town that I live in has a book shed for recycling books.
Ooh, that is lucky.
So I have found some incredible material in there. I'm always collecting old dictionaries and old encyclopedias and so forth. So a lot of times the materials that I find will dictate the topic of the collages.
So you must be drawn to black and white.
I am.
Yes.
I am, as far as photographs, because most of the illustrations are either, you know, black and white photographs or engravings or etchings and so
Yes.
forth. And I admire work by people like Max Ernst.
Yes.
You know, his story collages were just amazing.
Yes, the line qualities are
Yes.
so
Yeah.
incredible.
And there's so much detail. And
Yes.
it looks like another time, which is really exciting for me. I guess I you know, given my druthers, I'd be living back in the 1800s, except I probably would miss Photoshop.
Well, there's always some drawback,
There is.
whether
there
you move
is.
forward or back.
But I can evoke that same feeling by collecting the
Yes.
material. And the other nice thing too is there's no copyright issue when you appropriate an illustration from a book prior to 1920 or so.
Really?
Yeah, in most cases. I mean, there's some issues still, but generally you're safe